We are recording our next episode today of the CogniVerse. I'm really excited for our topic today. There are a few new areas that we haven't really explored before on the CogniVerse, which I think will be really helpful for a lot of people. So yeah, really excited to dig in. But I'd love to kind of throw this over to the guest today, James, just to share a little bit more about himself and also why he was interested in kind of saying yes to kind of jump on this podcast as well. So yeah, go ahead, James.
Hi Anna, nice to be with you again. Nice talking to you today. I work in product. I'm also like a musician as well. I'm neurodivergent, autistic and ADHD, and have a son as well who's autistic too. That's where my journey through the neurodiversity space began. I've been working in and out with AI since about 2018. And I guess when I saw the message about the podcast, I had a look at a couple of the episodes and thought it was really interesting. Some really interesting conversations had happened. So I was like, yeah, definitely want to chat to Anna and see where we go with the conversation. And
yeah,
happy that
absolutely.
stuff like this exists because it's they're topics which are not generally covered. So I think it's really important that there's more conversation around this in the recruitment space, in the technology space, seen as a huge majority are either self-diagnosed, undiagnosed, or diagnosed neurodivergent. Is like a majority of people in tech, so it's kind of a stigmatized area that's not really embraced much. So I think conversations like the ones which you are posing and putting together are super important to like push the lever in the direction of actual inclusion and acceptance, and openly just talking about, hey, look, it's okay to be wired differently. Like, let's figure out how we can better work together and create a better world. Which those of us who are a bit mission driven with what we do with technology would kind of believe that we're in technology to try and make a better world, try and change things.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is really kind of leans into what we're going to chat about today. Because for me, I'm not coming in as an expert, but I think that's also really important because sometimes the fear to say the wrong thing, to address something in the wrong way, stops people from even saying anything in the first place. You just want to distance yourself with it. So you're like, okay, I can't say anything wrong if I don't say anything. But then that causes a huge issue of people just feeling super isolated and just a real divide in the way things are kind of set up, particularly in tech. So yeah, I did prepare a couple of questions just to make sure that we covered kind of a range of things today that I know that you were really passionate about, and I was really interested in hearing a little bit more of a deeper dive into your opinions and your thoughts and just your advice. So without further ado, we'll crack on with the first one because we've got some stuff to cover today. So just super simple to start off with, but how has your experience as a neurodivergent technology leader shaped your approach to balancing parenting and work commitments? I think this is just a really general question, but if we hone in, I guess, with regards to being neurodivergent, that would be, I guess, really helpful.
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's kind of touches on both things, which we are multifaceted people. So like I'm a parent when it comes to the whole neurodiversity concept, but then also now I work in a work culture in Market Sizer where I was hired, or I was reached out to in the beginning because I'm neurodivergent. So there's an open culture in there where it's okay to be wired differently, as they said. I might say that phrase a bit too much, by the way. I like that phrase. But like there's an accepting culture, and people, we talk about it and laugh about it in a nice, friendly way. Like, so I guess like my approach has changed over the years because of my journey, both as a parent and both working in tech as well. My approach has gradually changed where like I'm better at also being more inclusive, or I'm better at maybe advocating for myself or for others, or for explaining myself without ranting on too much, which is kind of why it's good you have questions today structured, because otherwise I would rant on for too long. So yeah, it's a combination of those things, I guess. Like, and I think it's multifaceted. Like, it's about being an advocate, but also understanding that how you might come across when advocating or when speaking about something might also come across as being pushy or being rude or being, you just, it's kind of a lifelong struggle. Being neurodivergent is being misinterpreted and misrepresented, essentially. So it's a really fine line, and there's a nuance to it, like how, yeah, really talk to us about this. Like, what is it like doing this? And then you have to think about it for a second and say, right, I just can't throw everything at them and throw the kitchen sink at them, because then they're just going to be like, Jesus, your man is crazy, isn't he? Like, let's not ask him any questions again because he bored the hell off us. So, yeah, I guess the approach nowadays is to try and balance it. Like, your question included both the word shape, approach, and balance. And yeah, it's a good way to look at it. My perspective, their perspective, and how they might perceive me when I'm coming across in work, in school space with my son, or even just as a parent, try and make sure that I'm understanding his perspective in a scenario. And I think I take that with me in life then in work as well, like make sure that I'm stopping myself and checking myself to make sure that I'm being acknowledging other people's perspective and other people's needs as well in pretty much every situation that I can.
Yeah, and that to me, it just sounds like, it sounds so exhausting to have to constantly, I know that is the way, and we're not in a society, sadly, where people do acknowledge that or do understand it. And so you unfortunately do have to adapt and think about those things. But I think it's worth kind of pointing out that is exhausting every single day, most conversations, just to really have to kind of put yourself in like 3 different perspectives there.
Yeah.
But I guess, yeah, balance and that sort of perspective driven approach is what has helped you as well. I
In the
guess.
new job where I only started in March, thankfully it's not as exhausting because everyone has that approach. So it's like you said,
Sure.
I think through education, and that's why I'm kind of passionate as well about education, because we're teaching even the neurodivergent children that it's not okay for them to be different and that they are segregated from the other kids. Like, that's how things are done.
Hmm.
And our typical teachers as well aren't really knowledgeable in that space as well. So we already create a divide from the very bottom upwards
Hmm.
through life. So therefore it's obvious that in work environments there's going to be a lack of understanding and a lack of cohesion between neurotypical and neurodivergent, lack of understanding, lack of perspective,
Yeah.
because that's how we learned, so we have a lot of work to do.
Yes. Yes. And with all things, it starts from a really young age, and we're not there yet. So yeah, definitely ties in. Um, for my second question, I think this would be quite helpful just for whoever is watching this. But what strategies have you found effective in maintaining a healthy work-life balance and like raising your family?
Yeah. um so I think, like, in terms of strategy, like, it's a bunch of different things. It's kind of like your philosophy or your approach, like, and how you manage yourself, but also how you manage your emotions and like your time. So whatever works for me might not work for everybody else, but
Mm.
like, I try not to be too hard on myself. I try not to worry too much. These might sound like wishy-washy things to come out with as a strategy, but you know, I can get anxious and not realize that I'm getting anxious and then start over worrying about things. And often it's just the fact that we need to get some stuff from Tesco, or the fact that I have a meeting in the afternoon and I might not be 100% as prepared as I'd like to be. And those things can become overwhelming. So it's, I guess, like, the strategy that's effective in maintaining a balance between the two is like just trying to, again, like check myself and maybe like write things down a little bit and say, like, hold on a second, what are actually the different things that I need to tick off today? Like, seems really simple, but like a to-do list that you just check every morning, even if it's just on a sticky note or if it's a digital one, but just taking that minute before you go flying into your day and just say, okay, I've got that interview with Anna today at 3, so make sure I've done whatever I need to do in the morning, make sure I have my lunch early enough, make sure I'm, all of the different things are done so that I'm not leaving everything until the last minute. Because a lot of people like me will have a tendency to kind of get a lot of dopamine and adrenaline when there's a deadline, which is good, but it's also counterproductive because we'll worry a lot about the deadline. So like it'll be often the case where, oh, there's a meeting tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So that you have like lots of hours before 3 o'clock comes, but you can't take your mind off the deadline. So you find it very difficult to do anything else properly during the day because you're just constantly thinking about the deadline. It's just checking yourself with stuff like that and saying, no, like, hold on a minute, like, let's take a walk around, take a deep breath. I don't know, go and have a cold shower, whatever you need to do to like reset and say, like, oh, okay, hold on a second, I've got 5 hours until 3 o'clock. I don't need to be stressing about that right now. Like, let's stress about it 30 minutes beforehand and not for the entire day. And I think that's the same thing with it, like family commitments and everything, and kind of just looking at everything equally rather than trying to like weigh things as more important, like, weigh your job as more important or as a burden, or weigh your family as more important or as a responsibility, or kind of just try and look at everything as equal. They're just things that you do and you've chosen to do that, and that's the point that you're at in your life. You've chosen to engage in those different things. You could easily have chosen a different path. They're the decisions that you made, what's in your control, what's out of your control. Just try and like proactively manage your own anxiety around all of those different things. Yeah, and like be happy and celebrate things as well. Like celebrate the relationships that you have, positive relationships, the positive people in your life. I try and focus a bit on that as well, like celebrating and cultivating the positive relationships that I have, because I've never been one to make lots of great friendships or lots of great relationships, but the ones that I do make with people who are like-minded, maintain those and look after those people as well as much as they look after you. And if there's people in your life that are the opposite to that as well, like, be brave enough to sometimes remove the toxic people as well. I think that can be a hard one to maybe touch on. Like I was contemplating saying that out loud or not. Maybe some people don't like to think about that, but yeah, you might possibly have people in your life that are toxic and are really weighing you down. So make a decision, even it could be in your job, you could be working for a toxic boss, and then it's the right decision to, put on your LinkedIn hat and contact Anna and the likes of her teams or different recruitment companies and say, look, I need a change, and, go make a career change or go make a company change, because it's not good to be around people who are, sucking your energy and being toxic too. I know we've all been there. We've definitely all been
Yes,
there.
we have. I think that's really true as well. Like, I think everyone's felt that. And it is daunting because sometimes you get comfortable in the toxic vibe. I think you just get comfortable. You're so used to it that you convince yourself that that's just how it is. That's the norm. Everyone struggles with work, and actually life is so short, in my opinion, that it's actually yours for the taking, and if you're not happy, then try and do something about it, or try and surround yourself with those positive people who will help you and support you through whatever decision you make. So yeah, I definitely think that's really true. I think that's so relatable as well. I think a lot of people, like you said, have been in that position. How do you advocate for neurodiversity within your organisation, and then create the supportive environment around that for neurodivergent individuals? I feel like you're in a really great spot right now. So it'd be really interesting to hear that sort of element and, the advocation and support groups you have going on at the moment.
Yeah, within work, if we're to stick to just to work, like I left let's say, a toxic environment in January, and during the same time that my dad passed away. So I was in a place where I wasn't really ready to do anything for a while, a couple of weeks, and I kept procrastinating of actually using LinkedIn the way it's supposed to be used, because a good friend of mine, Tana, I did her career strategy mentorship a number of years ago, and she taught me like what LinkedIn is for, really, like what the actual game is there on LinkedIn. Like she explained the whole thing, like what's the motivations of recruiters and CEOs and everybody, and how you use it strategically. But I've been procrastinating, and then like a number of weeks later, I guess the end of February maybe, I was like, okay, I finally picked myself out of the slump, and then I went onto LinkedIn, and just from the post, because my label on my LinkedIn profile says product leader, neurodiversity advocate, AI for good, or something like that, my now boss reached out because he saw the word neurodiversity in my title. And because he's openly ADHD, and he has in his title and his LinkedIn is like ADHD as my superpower or something like this, because he manages it quite well as well. So it was great. Like the first couple of conversations were just around that. And then the same meeting the team, it was like, is there a culture fit? And, we worked through a few things that we learned about each other, even just during the interview process. And then since I've been there, I guess cultivating that has been just really, really nice, because they've been very understanding of like which would perceived in a different environment would be perceived as faults or lack of focus or bad timekeeping, or in a different work environment, that's what I would have been already labeled with on day 2 or day 3, when the mask wore off. But I'm in a working environment where there is none of that. Like nobody is trying to judge each other. We're just trying to do what we need to do. That's a very, very neurodivergent approach. Like people like me, we're very practical and logical based. So we're not really interested in all of the judgment stuff. We're more interested in just getting stuff done. So it's been great to just work in that environment. And I guess how I've been able to kind of cultivate that a bit more and support others is just having that mentality as well. Like someone reaches out, try and think about what they're trying to say. Like if someone reaches out and says, oh yeah, I've been working on this, what do you think? They might actually be wanting to say, here, I've been working on this, can you give me a hand? Because it's their way of saying that. And also when offering a hand, you know, don't be pushy about it, and don't say, look, you should do it this way. Like it's, again, like what I said at the beginning of the conversation, it's about learning how you're going to be perceived and try to see, you know, how I might come across as pushy or whatever, which is a tendency that I have when I'm really passionate about something. Like I'll just kind of go, oh yeah, let's do it this way, you should do it that way. And, that can come across as you're telling people what to do. So yeah, trying to be like lead by example in that sense, like where you're being seen as a leader. So don't be an arrogant leader, be an understanding leader and be a collaborative leader, and, build stuff together. They probably think I'm saying it too much, but I say it quite a lot. Like I don't have all the answers. Some of the stuff that I know that they haven't had the experience of yet, it might come across like I have all the answers. So in my deck, it literally says, look, this is what we're going to talk about today, but interrupt me at any point and correct me at any point, because I do not have all the answers. I'm just repeating stuff that I've learned applied to this use case that we're working on. Like, so trying to create that level playing field, I guess, is one of the things. Being understanding, being inclusive, truly being inclusive, not just saying you're being inclusive. Which can be tiny details as well, like, letting somebody leave their camera off. Like if you join a meeting and you see somebody looks a bit flustered on the call, this is advice, by the way, guys. If you see someone seems a bit flustered, or maybe they always seem a bit flustered, just send them a little message, like privately, and say, look, it's all right if you want to leave the camera off. Like, don't worry about it, And you might have just made somebody's work life a million times better, because they quite often might not be comfortable being on the camera. And you think it's nothing. Oh, I want to see everybody. That's what a lot of bosses will say. Yeah, but they might be super uncomfortable. And they might be equally as uncomfortable as they are dedicated to getting the job done. But you're being counterproductive by insisting that they need to have the camera on at all times, And you'll notice the more you make them feel comfortable, the more they'll open up. Because the more they'll be more comfortable being themselves, the more they'll come into the meetings with the camera on, just naturally.
So, can you share any insights on engaging with the neurodivergent community? to basically develop connections and support networks.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, this podcast is a brilliant example of, speaking about things openly, collaboratively, inviting people that you find, like you, from your perspective, what you're doing, inviting people that you find on LinkedIn that you think would be good people to talk about the topic. And yeah, that's a perfect example because essentially you're creating content, it's relatable content. So yeah, podcast is one of the best ways to do it. I generally do it through my music. I actually so I write a lot about things that are going on in my life, and this happens to be one of the main things over the last number of years. So I write a lot of music about this topic. So that's one way. Then obviously, connecting with like-minded people. For me as a parent, I've been involved in lots of parents groups and advocacy groups, which are generally lots of parents as well who are trying to change things for the better, especially for the young people from our community. And I guess really seeing it as a community as well, not seeing like, yeah, it's okay to say I have a disability, or it's okay to say like such and such person has a disability. It's fine to talk about it. Like I think there's a lot of fear around that. Like so removing that and just connecting with other people and seeing it as a community the same way any other community is a community. If you're similar to those people, then guess what, you might get along with them and you might actually create a lot of different relationships that can build and become different things that you might not have imagined. Such as a school project which I'm working on with a bunch of other parents, where we're trying to set up a school for initially primary school age neurodivergent children, because yeah, there's not enough schools for starters, and also a lot of the schools are using mentalities and approaches which are quite outdated and, without going too far down the rabbit hole, harmful. Um, so so yeah, I mean, if you get passionate about something, this happens to be something that you're passionate about. If you're listening, go for it. Start writing about it. Express your passion as well in a professional way on LinkedIn, in a more social way on other social media platforms, and engage with people. You'd be surprised the amount of people just like you who are out there ready to connect and delighted to meet you. Like so.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess like the resources you have found, how valuable have they been for you as a neurodivergent parent, but also as a tech leader?
So I haven't found a lot of resources like in terms of support networks for neurodivergent tech leaders, but there's an idea since you just asked,
Yeah.
maybe we need to set one up between the UK
Yeah.
and Ireland, and it's like, I don't know, it could be a WhatsApp group or whatever
Yeah.
where people just talk, like surprisingly, like most of it has been WhatsApp groups that I've found. A lot of the support networks, and you have to mute them because they get noisy,
Yeah.
but you dip in and out
Yeah.
and you see where you can pick up some nuggets here and there, or where you can provide some guidance here and there, but you can't be on it all the time. But yeah, those would be the main ones that I've kind of found. The support would be through learning from other parents who are a little bit further down the journey, and then also providing that help back as well for people who are just at the beginning of the journey,
Yeah.
whether that's through the journey of self-discovery or the journey of just understanding their child,
Yeah. Kind of that pass it on mentality as well.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. And something as simple as a WhatsApp group, sometimes I think we overcomplicate things and we're like, we need this whole big thing. It's actually like a WhatsApp group, super simple, but so effective.
And it'll run itself. People will just
Yeah.
talk, and like as long as you don't have any toxic behavior in there, like the odd time you have to step in and remove people if there's something like that going on, obviously. But as
Yes,
long
of
as you
course.
maintain a good vibe, they could be amazing resources, and they
Yeah.
become a little clique in itself,
Yeah.
and people get along even though they haven't met in person.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And we just kind of touched on toxic behavior in those groups. So how do you address stigma or misconceptions surrounding neurodiversity? I guess both personally, but also on a professional level.
Mm. I guess I spoke about it a moment ago where, like, in order for there not to be a stigma or a misconception around what I'm doing or saying, I have to think about other people's perspectives. And you said, oh, well, that must be exhausting. Yeah, it is exhausting. But masking is even more exhausting. And masking, for those of you who don't know, is what you do in like childhood and like in your teenage years, where you start to like dress or act or speak or behave in a certain way to fit in with a certain crowd.
Yeah.
That's the easiest example of what masking is, right? But we do it in lots of different areas in our lives.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that's also exhausting. So I'm glad I've dropped my mask now at this point in my life, eventually,
Yeah.
right? I probably dropped it at a couple of points in life and then put it back on again in a different flavor. But now I would say I've definitely managed to drop the mask and just kind of not wear a mask anymore, but still wear, let's say, a filter where I know I can be myself and that's okay, but also be careful not to make those misconceptions happen as well. Like, so it's a bit of a complex, nuanced question to answer because and there's a lot of rabbit holes to go down. Like, you know, especially when it comes to how young people who are diagnosed early have to deal with so many harmful practices, which are still the norm for some reason in 2024 progressive, you know, society that we live in, where we're so accepting and so inclusive of so many things. But when it comes to invisible disabilities, we still have like very outdated approaches, which are mostly
Yeah.
focused on the surface level behaviors or the things which are making that child different from the neurotypical child. And therefore they're judged on that rather than just supported and helped, regardless of what differences they have. So, and I guess you can think about it that way from a child's perspective, because it might be easier for you to see. But then if you fast forward to an adult life and you put a group of people who work together, a team of 10, 20, 50, 100, 500, or 1,000 people in an organization, you kind of need to, as like, I don't know if there's any HR people who are paying attention, but you need to have that in your approach of how people have a culture in work, like how their culture is. Like, are they really accepting of one another? Or are we just always doing the things the way that they've always been done because that was okay?
Yeah.
It might seem like it was okay based on certain KPIs and parameters that you were judging the company performance on, but maybe have a look at why you've got such a high turnover of very talented individuals. Why are those talented individuals leaving? It's not because they're getting extra money somewhere else. It's never about the money. It's a motivating factor. But I guarantee you, I'm comfortable where I am right now. I get messages up, and in the job description, I even got a message today. I'll be honest with you, I got a message today. It has a higher salary than where I am right now. As I'm happy where I am, what's the first thing? What's the first thought that comes to mind? Oh, the effort of trying to prove myself in the interview to somebody else. The effort of maybe going into an environment that's not as inclusive and accepting as the one which I'm
Yeah.
in. So money isn't the motivating factor.
No. No. It's interesting. I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Money really helps, but it's not the be all and end all, particularly when potentially looking at a new job. It's often culture first. Because if you're super happy somewhere, and I have friends who I'm sometimes like, why don't you just try? And but they're so happy. And you know what? Fair enough. That they kind of know their own mind and they know that that's what they want to do.
Nothing's forever, right? You're never going
Just
to stay in
yeah,
the same place forever. But
of course,
I
yeah.
just I just like mentioned that when, you know, maybe because I know you're in the recruitment space, so maybe there's people in the space who might listen. And yeah, it'd be
Mm,
great if they were listening, because I think there's a lot to change, you know, in that space.
yes.
There's a lot to change to make it better for everyone.
Yeah.
And when you think about making things better for neurodivergent people, things which you would implement in order to make practices more inclusive, such as interviews, will actually be better for everyone anyway.
Mm, yeah.
You know?
Exactly. 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 Um, and I guess this is the last question, but it really wraps up exactly what we were talking about, to be honest. But what changes would you like to see in the tech industry to better support neurodivergent individuals, for career development, also for parenting? And I know this is a super open-ended question, so
Mhm.
I guess don't feel like you need to cover everything, but I guess what for you springs to mind, what would you like to see change?
Yeah, so we're talking about both things, right? So I mean,
Yes.
let's just imagine in a tech company scenario, because a lot of the people that, anyone who might be listening, if they are in recruitment or if they're in HR or if they're a manager or whoever they are, they'll be dealing with other people who are parents as well, right?
Yes.
So if you have a colleague or a candidate who's a parent, really try to put yourselves in their shoes.
Mm.
And, what does that mean? If they seem really stressed or really flustered, understand that quite often is because they're actually working from home and trying to also be a parent at the same time, which can be
Yeah.
really challenging. And you can have off days where, you might just need a sick day.
Mm.
You might just be better off telling your colleague, look, just take the day off, relax, just no questions asked, just see you tomorrow. Because you'll notice, something is going on at home, and it's really tough for people to balance those things. Like, I know from experience,
Mm.
expectations of like, oh, I've got to be at that meeting at 2 o'clock, but I also have to do the school run at 1 o'clock. Like, that's a really stressful thing that I have to deal with every day. So like
Mm.
when people say like, what time are you available in the afternoon? I won't say 2 o'clock, because then I'm rushing to get back from driving my son to school. I'll say 3 o'clock. Like today I said
Mm.
for this chat,
Yeah.
3 o'clock is much easier for me because I've already ticked that box and I'm not stressed. And that's a tiny thing, but that's working together with colleagues and work. In terms of changing something, like in terms of practices, the number one thing would be expectations around interviews.
Mm.
The interview process needs to change overall. We're expecting people to be excellent at communicating when often their role doesn't involve a whole lot of communicating, or it's something that they could develop over time. But we're expecting them not just to be good communicators, but also under pressure to be good communicators, and asking them questions which they don't know are coming.
Mm.
This is the
Yeah.
general interview practice, right? Oh, I've got some questions. And they've got a big page full of questions, and you're sitting on the other end of a video call or in a room if it's in person. You've no idea what you're about to be asked. Like, how is that testing what you're going to be like to work together?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just a spot check if you know your stuff on a specific topic. Quite often, I'm under pressure in an interview and I feel under pressure, so I forget, even if I know the answer to the question, I forget what I'm supposed to say in that point because I'm just feeling pressure. So
Mm.
why not reverse this scenario, and why not start off the interview and let the person just talk for a while? Let the candidate just talk what they might want to bring to the table,
Mm.
or send them something in advance to
Yeah.
prepare and present. If you really want to see their communication skills, oh, I need someone who's a developer, but I also need someone who's able to communicate. Okay, great. Give them a topic, and not that it needs a whole lot of work, but give them a topic for them to do like a half an hour homework and come to the interview with something to talk about, and then just watch them and look, try and understand their process while they're presenting. Like
Mm.
a couple of times that I've done interviews recently, like I've tried to implement something quite alternative where a lot of interviews already send like a kind of a task, right?
Right.
But then they'll try and catch them out on the task.
Mm.
And again, you're
Yeah.
doing the same thing. So instead of trying to catch them out, just say like, okay, I sent you the task. Did you do it? Yeah, yeah, I did it. Okay, great. So I'm not going to ask you anything. All I want you to do,
Mm.
share your screen and walk me through your thought process.
Mm.
What a great way of just understanding how that person's mind works in
Mm.
a totally relaxed way. And make sure they know they're not being judged as well. Like the first thing you should say if you're saying anything is, I'm not going to judge you today. I'm just here to get to know you.
Yeah. I like
Simple.
that.
I'm here to
Mm.
get to know you. We might not be a fit. We might be a fit. The best way for me to get to know you is for you to be at ease and be
Mm.
yourself and talk me
Mm.
through the task so we can simulate how that might have been in the work environment. If you really need to test their skills, if you don't need to test their skills, then don't in the interview.
Mm.
Spend those interview conversations. If it's 2 or 3 conversations with different team members, after the recruiter, then you're putting it onto the manager or a team member or whatever, and let them spend those moments in the call for half an hour just talking
Mm.
without any pressure.
Yeah.
Just try and get to know each other, because straight after the call, that team member will message the manager and say, "Oh yeah, no, I got a really good feeling,"
Yeah.
or no, I didn't get a good vibe off that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I think change the interview process would be the main thing to change, because that's the beginning process. you're changing how you're judging each other. You know, you're kind of already giving people a chance from the start. If your initial point of contact with a new person who's going to join a company is already like judgment and like almost feeling like they're being put down or feeling like they're being put under a lot of pressure, I think you're already starting on the bad foot. You're already starting on the wrong foot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that would be one that we could just leave in the open rather than going into a bunch of other things that you could change in terms of collaborative ways of working, because I think we touched on some of those things already during the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
really love to see like truly inclusive interview processes in companies. And it's not because someone is neurodivergent that they need that. Yes, they do, and they will perform better in that type of an interview process. But I think everybody would, guys.
I think so too. I really like those ideas, and that's something for even me to think about, to be honest. So yeah. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
I really
Really thank
appreciate
you.
it.
And like I applaud you for having this space, cultivating this space, spending time creating this space and creating this content, because we need more people who do that. We need more people
Yeah,
like you in your field as well. We need more people who
definitely.
are talking about this, and spreading the word. You know, if you're listening to this, share it, please. Send it to other people. Look at the other episodes. I learned lots from the other episodes I watched. You know, they're not too long. Put them on in the background while you're reviewing CVs or whatever you're doing, and share them around as well if you find them valuable. Because yeah, we need to change things to make work cultures better. And
Yeah,
when a work culture is better, companies are more successful. So if you're in recruitment, then that means you're going to have more work. If the companies are more successful, they need to keep hiring. And
yeah,
if you have an amazing recruitment process, you're going to be delivering happy candidates. So therefore, it's going to result in more business for you.
yeah.
Um. So I mean, yeah, it's a really interesting space to talk about, and delighted to be here today speaking to you about it. Thanks so much, Anna.
No, thank you so much. And where can people find you if they wanted to reach out and have a chat with you?
Yeah, well, I'll be tagged in the LinkedIn post for sure, and
Yes.
I'll share that around. So I guess for this audience, you know, we'll stick to LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It's probably the best place. I check it
Yeah.
quite often, so I'll check the messages and stuff, and happy to talk to anybody as well if anyone wants
Amazing.
to reach out.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's been great.
Thanks, Anna.